So in today's lesson we're going to have a look at isometric projection, building on the work we've done previously looking at oblique projection. So a little bit first about isometric sketching theory. So what you're essentially doing here that's different to the oblique view is all the lines that are coming off the horizontal actually brought up at 30 degrees. So you don't have one face which is square on. Okay. So if I do a series of diagrams here to show you how you would construct an isometric cube for your crating technique when you're producing your own design ideas. So the easiest way to start is with an upside down T, and then the next step in constructing your isometric cube would be to bring your 30-degree lines off the horizontal. Now obviously whilst you're learning to do this you can check this with a protractor, but you really want to try and build that muscle memory in so that visually you can kind of get a rough line at 30 degrees each time you sketch freehand. So if we assume that's 45 degrees there, 30 would be somewhere like that. And then we just turn the page slightly and try and get the matching angle on the other side of the line. So the next step would be to bring those lines 30 degrees off the horizontal and then add in a vertical line either side. What we can then do is move on to bringing in parallel lines to those 30-degree lines we already added. So key thing to get right here, and actually what can help is if you extend that central construction line. So what you're aiming for here, and the first thing to strike is a parallel line. Remember that double dash notation with your 30-degree line there, and you need to do the exact same on the opposite side. Okay, it doesn't matter at this stage because we're just sketching construction lines if those lines need adjusting slightly and you end up with double dashes on the page. So what I've done there is that's the previous vertical line, 3 vertical lines we had. Then we've got a 30-degree line here, notation there with the horizontal. So we've kept that 30-degree angle, and then the internal is 60. Okay, and the benefits of this are many, but the main thing is you're getting accurate proportion of the front plan and end elevations of any object you intend to sketch. Okay, so what we really want to try and do is build off the work we've done previously on oblique projection. So again, I've put my 2 construction lines in there to help with the title block, so we can title our work with nice clear printed capitals: isometric projection. And what we want to try and do is replicate the same work we did with the oblique projection in isometric. So we've got some contrasting pieces of work there, 2 contrasting pieces of work. We can see a progression in skills. So what you would aim to do, if the first shape I sketched in the oblique view previously, if you remember, was a cube, where I simply sketched a square on the page and brought the exterior corners out at 45 degrees. This time, following that technique I've just demonstrated, for the purpose of the video, I'll bring my vertical lines in towards me, but whilst you're developing your skills, try and turn the page to help. And again, if you're getting this correct, that central line should intersect the point where the 2 top lines meet. It's worth just looking straight over your sketch to check that all the lines look nice and parallel. And again, just as you work through, take your fine liner and accentuate any of those lines that are core lines of the main sketch. For this, I will actually turn the page. Okay, so we've got a cube there. The next shape I did was an equilateral triangle. So if you're really struggling to get the proportion correct in isometric, again, use the center line, and I suggest you all use the crating technique to help you with this, because it can get quite complicated. There is a tendency when sketching freehand with isometric to go too shallow on the construction lines. As long as it's there or thereabouts, you're never really going to notice a difference, but you can end up starting to distort your drawing. Now, for this, because it's a prism, I don't actually need that to be a perfect cube. This is more of a cuboid, because you can see I've elongated this line in comparison to this one. They're two different lengths, but the main thing is these two lines are parallel, and so are these two. Okay, so what I'm then going to do is just divide that front face up. I've got 1 point here, 1 point here, and 1 point here. I'm going to bring my line across and then divide that rear line up into two, and then last thing to finish that off, bring a parallel line down the side there. And again, just take my fine liner. So we've got a series of construction lines at the moment. We just want to accentuate those lines so the object really stands out on the page. And all we're looking for is you to develop accurate sketching skills at this stage. We're not designing products. We're looking for an understanding of the technique and the basic setup when sketching designs with this technique. So next one was pentagonal prism. So again, just following that process. Divide up use this crate to help construct your model. So divide up that front face, so I can then use these points to help make sure what I'm sketching is nice and accurate. Again, where you should have parallel lines, make sure they are, otherwise it's really obvious. That line should be parallel with that line, and likewise at the top. And as you work through, bringing in that technique from before, if you want to accentuate the lines where there would be air behind, if the object were to be sat on a surface, you can do so. I'm just doing that before I draw on the bottom section of the sheet, so I don't smear anything on the page. Okay. So we then had a hexagonal prism. So I'll elongate this one a little bit more. So we could actually draw in show you a different way of doing this actually. So if we divide that front face into three and then half in the other plane, we've straight away got our hexagon. And you could actually do the exact same on the rear face. It's just a different way of doing this. And then essentially dot to dot those points. And then what you want to do is just use the fine liner. And the key thing here is making sure you highlight the correct lines and nothing that doesn't need to be highlighted. Okay. Then we had a right angle triangle. So all I'm working through here is the exact same as what I did with the oblique projection, but just so that it's really useful as a learning process to have comparison and something to contrast against, so you can see different processes. Just divide that in two. We've got our right angle triangle. Haven't really left enough room for my cylinder on the right here, but see what we can do. And to finish off, let's sketch the cylinder. So again, you could do that in any plane really. You could have it coming down or across. So it's all the same technique. Got my angle out a bit there. Do my vertical line. See, if you sketch nice and faint with your construction lines, you can adjust those as you go. Probably a bit too steep on this right hand side here. But anyway, that's got the rough idea there. Looks accurate enough. So all I'm going to do is divide the top face into 4 and the bottom face. So I would normally, in isometric projection, any circular object's actually elliptical. So you're projecting an ellipse there, but I'll show you this, remind you of that technique. Then you divide the diagonals. Each diagonal then becomes its own line, and 2/3 out from the centre is a specific point for marking your arc, and then obviously where the division halfway along each line does. Then all you need to do is sketch in a slight curve to it. Okay. And then just bring your vertical lines down the sides. Then you can take your fine liner, and again just take your time doing this. And just the front edge on the bottom face. And then once you've done that, we can then bring in some of those techniques from previous lesson, thinking about our rendering. You can have a go at just some of the simple hatchings, just to show shadow on a face. So keeping parallel diagonal lines, close they are together, indicates a darker surface. So as they come apart, indicates the surface is getting lighter. So we've got light hitting the top. Some reflection here and then darkness there, so perhaps a shiny metallic surface. If we take the circle at the top here, divide the quadrant up, shade that in, divide each other quadrant into thirds, slightly lighter tone. Dark band down the outside here. That light will transfer down. So we've got our shiny aluminium cylinder here. mild steel perhaps, darker than aluminium's a lighter grey. So just thinking about your materials. So if you've got your glossy plastic, child's play toy, something like that, like a block. Think about clear, large bands of light, a bit like you'd find on the front of your phone screen. Okay, so that's your glossy plastic surface. Having a go with that rendering technique just as you progress your skills is useful. The more you get used to it, the more you'll think about how materials relate to specific objects, geometry, surface size and position and things like that. Okay, so that's first piece of isometric work to be getting on with.